Let's now bring in Professor Ntsikelelo Breakfast, who's the Director of the Center for Security, Peace and Conflict Resolution at the Nelson Mandela University, and Professor Mzikayise Binza, who's the Deputy Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs at Walter Sisulu University. They will be with us and also listen to the review by the President and give us some analysis. Thank you, Profs, for making time for us. Let me start by perhaps, Professor Breakfast, what you are expecting from the President of the ANC when he does this review. I imagine he'll start with some successes, what the party, governing party has been able to achieve, but also explain why certain things have not been achieved since the promises were made in 2019.
Yeah, Clement, I don't know what is there at the review, largely because in the build-up to the general elections of 2019, the ANC made a lot of commitments that it never honored. For instance, I can pick and choose one aspect. He said that the economy was going to grow and that growth was going to lead to a trickling down effect, which was going to be felt by the poorest of the poor on the ground. That never happened. He's also made a commitment to address corruption, but corruption has been out of hand. The other issue that I want to reflect on is the fact that he is fully convinced that the ANC is going to win the upcoming general elections. The ANC needs to come to the realization that one-party dominance is a thing of the past, and that its hegemony has been dealt with a blow. In the recent local government elections, the ANC would have lost power on a large scale had we had general elections. It's just that those elections were at local government level. The mere fact that there have been other component structures of the ANC pronouncing that the ANC should consider joining forces with other opposition parties, like joining forces with the DA. That's what the Youth League said, and also the Veterans League said, even though Mbalula took a swipe at them, signifies that the possibility that the ANC might lose power is not something which is far-fetched or something that is impossible. So I don't understand the line of thinking of the President when he says that the ANC is going to win elections. Yeah. I think it's something that they need to understand, that those days of them dominating the political landscape are gone.
Yeah. Professor Binza, I imagine any political party will take that posture because you want to say to your supporters that we have confidence that you will vote us into power. I mean, no political party campaigns on the basis that even when they know very well that they'll not be in power, no political party campaigns just so that they can be a small party that can then club in with the others. We're probably going to see this for the first time ever next year with this pact that has now been formed between the DA and the other parties. But you get where Professor Breakfast is coming from, that perhaps the ANC is naive in thinking they will be able to be retained and be returned to the union buildings after the elections next year.
Thank you, Clement, and the listeners. Good day to you all. I understand where Professor Breakfast is actually coming where he is coming from. Is somehow true with the fact that the ANC had some challenges in many municipalities in its local government elections. That basically is an indicator that things are not as normal or as periods of elections. And I think the indicators made by the ANC Youth League to indicate to the ANC mother body to say, yeah, you must think about coalition is simply because the Youth League is basically in touch with what is happening on the ground. The reality of the matter is that the voter population of 1994, for example, is long gone, because the voter population of 2024 is youth. And the population of the country is mainly youth. Whether you go to the cosmopolitan areas or to the rural areas is mainly youth. And the extent in which the ANC has convinced the young people to vote, it's something else that we still need to see, because we see a number of youth going to other parties. However, there's a second reality that the ANC is still in power. There are smart people who understand what happened during the COVID-19, what happened in terms of the ANC trying to get rid of corruption, what happened with regard to the political tsunami that was in KZN during the President Zuma going to prison, etc. And President Ramaphosa is referring to a third issue of climate change. All those kind of natural disasters that actually happened, that chowed a lot of money. That says, that has actually disturbed them. But what we must actually appreciate now in the politics of the Republic is the approach that these political parties, including the ANC, is actually taking. For example, they are saying, for the first time, let us review what we have done before the election manifesto launch in 2024.
Yeah.
That is something that has never been done before. It's basically to acknowledge now for the public, so that when they go to doing a door-to-door campaign, nobody's basically asking them why you didn't do this, because everybody. Can you?
Yeah, we can hear you, Professor Binza. You can just conclude your response.
Yes. So all I'm trying to say is that this is a two-way process. Is where we acknowledge that the ANC has done very limited on the issues of the economic front, but they've also done they've done very limited on the issues of corruption, because the challenge that they have as far as corruption is actually concerned is that some of the ANC members are corrupt. If you look at the Zondo Commission, they say about 92 people who are in higher leadership of the ANC have been declared or seen as a corrupt people. So how do you trust an organization like that? But at the same time, they are saying, we as an ANC, we are taking steps to get these people to account. And that's basically what the country is basically looking for.
Yeah. Professor Breakfast, let's look at some of what was promised back in 2019. I was just going through my scripts back in 2019 when I was reporting about the launch of the manifesto in 2019 ahead of elections then. And I see there were so many promises that were made. I mean, high unemployment was on the agenda, economic growth, the triple challenges that the ANC always speaks of poverty, unemployment, and inequality. How has the party fared in addressing some of these challenges that were top of the agenda on their manifesto in 2019 when we look over the past 5 years?
Yeah, I think those security threats that you have cited, which are posing a danger to our democracy, are still with us, namely unemployment, poverty, and inequality. The problem, first of all, is I think the application of neoliberalism, which is a market-friendly approach, which goes against the aspirations of the poorest of the poor. I mean, for instance, there's a big debate in the ANC at the moment. Some people, they are demanding accountability from Pravin, because they are in the dark in terms of how, transactions have happened with regard to how SAA was sold, and some people are alleging that the minister might have benefited from that, or he has a link with the other players in that transaction. The other problem lies with the bureaucracy. Some of the people who are appointed within the bureaucracy are not appointed on merit. The ANC has been talking about the issue of, professionalizing public administration. I'm not sure if that has happened, because we hear a lot of stories about people who don't hold academic qualifications in senior positions of government, and that has led to the slow pace of service delivery. So those are some of the challenges that government is faced with. And of course, sometimes, not all the time, the factional battles of the ANC also have a negative spillover effect to government. For instance, I mean, the conflict that broke out that Professor Binza was referring to earlier on in 2021 was caused by the factional battles of the ANC. Even, the fire that broke out in Parliament. In fact, Parliament did not catch fire. It was set on fire, because of the conflicts within the ANC, how they feed into government. So those are some of the challenges that have made government to be hamstrung and not be able to get the job done.
Professor Binza, your assessment of the performance of this organization since 2019, I think when I heard Phoebe Potgieter speak to our reporter Zianda Ngobo live from Dobsonville earlier, she seemed to suggest that there are improvements that have been made around the delivery of services. The only thing that government needs to hone on is the quality of that service. Whether you talk about infrastructure, public infrastructure, you talk about the education system, just the normal basic services. She says we need to improve on the quality of those services. But in terms of delivery, she says they're seeing incredible progress. Your thoughts?
Thank you again, Clement. When we follow in fact, any organization, you have to follow the organization organically, as well as you follow it in terms of its own policies. Has there been any delivery, whether it's actually in theory? For example, if the ANC says, it put in its manifesto that we are going to fight gender-based violence, you look at the number of programs in a number of organizations that the ANC government has actually implemented in that regard. However, you match what you see on paper in theory with what is happening on the ground. There is still a number of gender-based violence, a number of cases that has been reported, and where the police have come short to address those issues on time. So there are a number of strides that the ANC government has done. However, there are challenges as far as the efficiency is actually concerned to say how soon you achieve this. At the same time, we need to be realistic, Clement. The population rate is actually increasing. If you look at the budget that is put forward for 2023-2024, can really ANC achieve its own target based on that? No. So we can see all these things that are done to address these issues, but the people on the ground, some of them haven't seen these things actually happening. But you and me can say, here is it. I mean, I can point a number of things. I can point a number of things that the ANC has done as far as the industrialization is actually concerned. I can point a number of things that the ANC government has done to address, to mainstream people, particularly black people like you and me in the economy. I can point those things. But it seems to me that there's a lot of people who want to be mainstreamed, but there are limited resources. So until we see an ANC that moves with speed when it addresses issues, until we see an ANC that is not changing the manifesto of 2019, but putting the same manifesto, maybe about 95% of it to say, yes, we did achieve 100% of the issues that we wanted to achieve in 2019. But we're putting the same so that we get to be measured, so that we make sure that in these coming periods, we achieve them 100%.
Professor Ntsikelelo Breakfast is with the Nelson Mandela University joining us. We also have Professor Mzikayise Binza, who's the Deputy Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs at Walter Sisulu University. Thank you for staying with us, gentlemen. Professor Breakfast, let's talk about what perhaps has interrupted the plans that the ANC government had over since 2019 over the next 5 years. COVID-19, nobody saw that coming. That was in 2020. Funds had to be reprioritized. There were certain budgets that were intended for specific programs as per the ANC manifesto, but they had to throw that book out of the window because we were dealing with the unknowns and we needed funds to be reprioritized to respond to this global pandemic.
Yeah, I think most of the challenges that the government is faced with at the moment, they predate COVID-19. I think what COVID-19 did was just to expose the contradictions that we have in a society in terms of the divide between the haves and the have-nots. And also under the circumstances of COVID-19, we saw, corruption on a large scale and government falling short in terms of addressing that. The Ramaphosa administration has been talking about state capture, which is all well and good. But also under the circumstances of COVID-19, we saw how people used both social and political capital in pursuit of personal accumulation in order to amass wealth. So corruption has worsened under this particular administration. So I don't think that government should attribute its slow pace of service delivery to COVID-19. I think that framing is problematic. I think there is more to that than meets the eye. The challenge is with regard to the bureaucracy. We don't have a capable bureaucracy that is able to get the job done. The policies of government also are not poor-friendly, but they are business-friendly. In the build-up to the general elections of 2019, President Ramaphosa was projected by the left of the tripartite alliance as someone who was worker-friendly, but it has turned out that he is business-friendly. No wonder even, during the State of the National address, he said that it's not the role of government to create jobs and so on. That is the role of business. That kind of language is an antithesis of the plight of the working class.
But what has he done specifically that demonstrates to you that he's been anti-poor? What do you think are some of the examples that demonstrate that favor for businesses and not so much for the working class?
One of the hallmarks of market fundamentalism is the notion that the government must take a back seat and elevate market forces. They must do as they please. And that's what he said, during the State of the Nation address. And he had to be chastised by his own comrades. And then he, sort of like a somersaulted. So his orientation, I don't think is that of the working class. And also we see, privatization of services, which has created a scope for corruption. So those are markers, in my view, of market fundamentalism. But the ANC, on the other hand, has been talking about a developmental state, a state that takes a lead in terms of promoting development in theory, but in practice, it does the exact opposite of that.
Yeah. Professor Binza, is it Cyril Ramaphosa or is it the ANC that's pushing for this kind of maybe even ideological shift when it comes to SOEs? As Professor Breakfast says, at some point it was pushing for these SOEs to be used for that developmental agenda, but now what you're seeing is the introduction of private players, possibly also because you need these SOEs to be run like companies, to be run like businesses. And history has taught us that that's been quite a challenge, even by the different people that have taken the leadership positions, executive positions there. So do you think that's just the posture and approach of Cyril Ramaphosa, or is it the party? Because when you look at even the policy documents of the ANC last year, they spoke to a more private, public-private partnership as they continue with governance, and they hoping that they are returned to the union buildings next year.
Thank you again. I will not say that he's President Ramaphosa, because President Ramaphosa is the president of the ANC, and the ANC is the one in power, not the president in power in terms of the politics. So what we need to basically understand is when we look at the economic policies that are put by the government, and yes, we're going to see a number of notions that are of capitalism in nature. However, we need to understand from a global point of view. Let's take, for example, countries like China, who are led by the political party like the Communist Party of China. And you look at the entire economy. Would you say the Chinese economy is communist? No, you won't say that. So the point is, how do we allow the same ANC that is Africanist in its outlook in addressing the needs of the poor who are Africans, and how they can do so in a sustainable manner if they're not allowing the private sector to an opportunity to grow the economy? I mean, you can't. I mean, you need to give the private sector an opportunity to grow the economy so that you can sustain what you give to the poor, the so-called redistribution. Because without development of the economy, without being developmental in nature, you're not going to be able to sustain the redistribution that we're doing to the poor of the poor. Let's look, for example, I'm not talking on behalf of the ANC, but let's look at the number of increase during the COVID-19. The government had to come up and give people 350. We can sit here, payment, with the listeners and say, what is 350, by the way? What is it that you can afford for 350? But let's look at those people who have used that money to change their lives, the lives of the members of their families. I mean, it's quite a huge impact. Let's look at the number of at the increase of the social grants. Where is that money coming from? That money is coming from the fiscals of the country. Who contributes most to the fiscals of the country is the business. So I see the ANC president in front, of course, in implementing the policies of the ANC, but there are times when he tries to be at the forefront alone, instead of allowing the whole ANC to be basically at the forefront. Mm-hmm. So I mean, we have seen these kind of notions that are paradoxical in nature in a number of countries. You look at Singapore, you look at South Korea, you look at Japan, and these countries are not pursuing a pure capitalist approach in terms of their paradigmatic politics, but they are different. So is the ANC. The ANC can never be socialistic in nature on its own. Yeah, it's in alliance with the Communist Party and the Labour. So those two alliance members must, of course, do their job to push the ANC to take that particular discourse. But the ANC cannot do it on its own. Mm-hmm. It has to remain where it is. So my point here is that, yes, with these policies that we see, good on paper, but there are still challenges on the implementation side.
Yep, and the ANC seems to be doing things a little different this time around. Yesterday, the president was taking inputs from members of academia, reflecting on the progress and the failures over the last 5 years. And today, the organization reviewing its 2019 election manifesto at the Dobsonville Stadium. The president is expected to speak there. The program possibly going to start after 1 o'clock. Thank you to Professor Breakfast and Professor Binza for that analysis. Stay with us here on Newzroom Afrika.